why it's the foundation of this thing we call the inquiry square. That's where you start. So if I'm going to teach kids dialogue, I got to have that purposeful context of use. So it's probably going to be something like writing a story, or including conversation and some other kind of writing where that conversation is going to do work, like provide the perspectives of different thinkers about a particular issue. Now, what are the purposes of putting dialogue in your writing? Why would you want to do it? What work does it get done? It reveals character. It could further plot. It can provide background information in a way that is lively to read and contextualize in human interactions. It can create and intensify conflict, use multiple voices and perspectives, eliminate texture and streamline the writing, dramatize interaction, show versus tell. I'm sure I could come up with other things, but those things come off the top of my head. That's the prerequisite, the purpose and context. What's the next step as a writer? You have to generate stuff. You have to generate dialogue in this case, right? That doesn't happen automatically. What happens after you generate the dialogue? Then you have to know how to shape it, how to punctuate it, that kind of thing. Now, I have to tell you that in my own career, what I spent a lot of time on when I was teaching dialogue was, it was on this other side, about the declarative knowledge of substance and form. So I would say to the kids, hey, you yahoos out there, you super students, you reading rabbits or whatever, come on. You got to get some dialogue into your writing. And you got to punctuate it correctly. And let's remember that the quotation marks go around what the people say. And then maybe I thought I'd be really hip, and I would read some dialogue to the kids and say, whoa, check that out. What'd you notice? It's all over here. Even though I think I'm being really progressive, right? I'm just telling the kids stuff. And naming stuff. There's no power. They're not learning how to generate dialogue and how to shape dialogue. So it's inert. And then I wonder why the dialogue stinks when they're writing. When I finally got hip to the inquiry square, when I finally went from the kids are consumers to the kids are producers, I realized that the cornerstone of writing dialogue is getting the kids to produce it. So I have to give them practice in generating dialogue by giving them a role-playing scene, and they go, okay, write down the dialogue from that scene. Role play. Give them scenarios and say, what would the character say as a result of the scenario? Give them photographs. What would this character say if he saw this character on his ranch? What would that character say to this character? What if his young daughter came? What would she say? You know, so I'm giving them practice generating the dialogue. Step into a picture activity. Give them a famous painting or photograph saying, you step into the picture. What do you say to these people? What do they say back? Give them a cartoon with everything blanked out. Fill in the dialogue. What do you think they're saying to each other? What makes you think that? How does that further the scene, intensify the conflict, reveal the character, fulfill the purposes of dialogue? Once they have some stuff like that, then I can teach them to shape it. So, and form it. So, instead of telling them the rule, which I did for many, many years, and never worked, and it never got into my thick skull, oh, that didn't work, I wonder why they're never learning how to correctly punctuate. It's because I never gave them practice in actually doing it. So let's take our dialogue and, and punctuate it. I provide them with models and ask them to induce the rules. I have them apply the rules to borrow dialogue, for instance, the stuff we generated here. I'd have them write notes back and forth and then transfer it into a dialogue, doing these things, the quotation marks enclosing the speakers. I do a kinesthetic mystery pop where a dialogue was completely cut up and they have to redo the dialogue, much like Rich did with us, into the correct order, and then put taglines on them. Produce a dialogue together with other people and punctuate it together. And punctuate for the tagline. So it was practice, 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 practice. A couple of my favorite practice things that I did with kids was I would take these little scenarios and I'd say, okay, a grandma, a motorcycle gang member, a valley girl, and a rapper are at Thanksgiving dinner together. Explore their verbal reactions to each other and how each would say, pass the potatoes. It'd be fun, right? And they'd have to put taglines on it for it to make any sense. A woman and her ex-boyfriend, she is on her way to her wedding, where she is marrying her best friend. They get stuck in an elevator. What do they say to one another? Who starts? How do they say it? You have to have taglines. You have to correctly punctuate. Kindergartner and third grader at a bus stop, the first day of school. So providing scenarios that help generate the dialogue and require them to form the dialogue, to correctly punctuate the dialogue so that it would be interesting. So this is teaching where you're over on this generative side, helping the kids to produce the structures. Now, when I do that, what happens is that they can name what's being done, right? They now know what a tagline is, and they know what it should do. So it's gone from being inert information to being a conceptual tool. They know what quotes are, and they know what work they should do. They might be able to name the whole idea of voice, and it's conceptual and toolish because they know how to generate it as well as talk about it. They can give you the rule, but no longer is it this inert thing they memorize for a test. Now they know why quotations are punctuated in that way so that we can tell who's saying what. They know why we indent new paragraphs with each new speaker. And they can explain it because they've had practice generating it and correcting examples and taking examples that weren't punctuated and punctuating them. So this becomes conceptual instead of inert knowledge that they were just told. So that's the power of starting with the production. That's basically all the inquiry square is. Let's start with the purpose, like real authors do. Let's practice generating the material. Let's practice shaping the material. And then let's name what we did and why we did it that way. And in the end, we can say, wow, the dialogue that purveyed this kind of information and was shaped in this way worked for this effect. And then we've achieved the common core, which requires to see how authors make decisions and integrate particular kinds of ideas and moves into their writing for particular kinds of meaning and effect. So it's just a simple example how even something simple like dialogue or using introductory clauses or whatever, if you're going to have kids deeply understand it, they need to know how to produce it and how to correctly shape it and then to name how those things work in that piece of writing to create meaning.